Good morning, friends. Today is going to be a fun day because I have my sister and my niece and nephew visiting. So I figured it'd be a good day to can up some of our apples that we have and do a couple of apple canning projects together. The other day I was able to go to our local farm down the street, and they had a bunch of apples that they had just picked off their trees. And I think this might be the last chance I get to preserve a lot of apples before they are completely out of season here. So behind me we have over 20 pounds of apples that we are going to do a few different canning projects with. We are going to be using the Ball canning book that I have here for a few recipes today. So the first one that we're going to make are a few pints of applesauce, just plain applesauce. And then the other thing that I thought would be fun to make is apple pie filling. And I think this will be a great thing to have in the pantry so that when the summertime gets here and we are looking for fresh apples, we'll have this ready to go, and I can just make a pie crust and then put the apple pie filling in the pie and we'll be all set. Okay, according to the book, the first step we have to do is peel, core, and slice 12 pounds of apples. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. This was my first time using one of these apple peelers and cores, and it gave me a little bit of a hard time on this medium to large size apple, but it did seem to work pretty well on all of our smaller apples. My sister stepped in and helped peel the apples, and while she was peeling the apples, I was cutting the rings in half to turn them into slices, and then putting those slices in our lemon juice and water mixture to prevent any type of browning. Now we are just going to take these slices, drain off any of the extra water, and put them into our large stock pot. Here we have all of the apples in our pot, and I just added a little bit of water to the bottom so they wouldn't burn. And we're going to stir this now, and this needs to boil for about 15 minutes. Just a slow boil to soften our apples. Now that our apples have cooled for a little bit, we're going to work in small batches, and we're just going to puree in our food processor. And then I have a clean bowl that I'm going to put everything into once it's pureed, and then we'll transfer that back to our pot. With this applesauce, you can make it as smooth or as chunky as you would like. I made mine pretty smooth with just a little bit of texture to it. And I'm just going to stir all of my pureed batches together to have a more even flavor. The last step we need to do before we can can our applesauce is to return the puree back to our pot. And now we are going to add in the lemon juice and any sugar if you're going to add sugar. The book does say that the sugar is optional, but the lemon juice is not, to make sure that you have safe canning practices. So be sure to add the lemon juice, but you can add as little or as much sugar as the recipe calls for. we're just going to stir this together, turn the heat on very low, and we are just looking to melt the sugar into the apples. And once that has happened, we are ready to go ahead and can up this applesauce. Alright, we are ready to go ahead and start the canning. So all we have to do is we have our cans over here in our hot water bath, and I have them just getting warm, and then we're going to fill it with our warm applesauce mixture, and then we are going to process these for 20 minutes, it says, and we're going to leave about a 1/2 inch headspace on these. So let's get these filled up. I find using a measuring cup to help transfer the applesauce to the jar makes it much easier when canning. Next, I am just going to wipe the tops and rims of all of our jars with a little bit of vinegar that I have on a napkin, and that is going to ensure that we get a good seal with our lids. After putting the lid on, I'm just going to put the ring on, and you just want this to be fingertip tight. You don't want to over tighten these because that could give you a false seal on your lid when we go to put it in the canner. So just as tight as your fingertips can get it. Now that we have the applesauce done and out of the canner, we are going to go ahead and start our second project today, which is going to be the apple pie filling. And for this, we're going to start the apples the same way, except we're going to make them into a little bit thicker slices, probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick. And we're going to put them in the same lemon juice water mixture. So that'll be the only difference starting our apples. So let's prep those first. So the next step after prepping our apples is going to be to boil them for 1 minute in boiling water. I did this in 3-cup intervals. We're going to need 12 cups of apples total for the recipe, so I figured this was the easiest way to keep track of how many cups I had for the recipe. And after the apples were done boiling for the 1 minute, I just drained them with my slotted spoon and put them in another bowl to stay warm. Once we are done cooking all of our apples, I'm going to just drain off this water and use this pot to make the filling portion of the apple pie filling. The first thing we're going to add is our sugar to the pot. Next, we're going to add in the clear gel, and I had just purchased this off of Amazon. The Ball Canning book says that there is not a good substitute for clear gel for the canning to still be safe. So that is why I chose to go ahead and just order the clear gel and use that. After that, we are going to add in our spices of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. And we're going to go ahead and add in our water that we need. Now we're just going to add the unsweetened apple juice to the mixture. And we are going to stir this over medium-low just to get everything combined and until it boils. As you can see, it gets thick very quickly, and this is the consistency that we're looking for. So at this point, you want to add the lemon juice and stir that for about another minute. Now we're just going to add in all of our apples and fold these and warm the apples through before we put them in our jars to can them up. We are going to can these up the exact same way we did the applesauce. This time I'm going to leave a 1-inch headspace though, and I'm just going to use a chopstick to make sure there's no air bubbles in our jars before we put them in the canner. The apple pie filling is going to need to process for 25 minutes, so I'm just going to add some more water to make sure that the lids are covered and then bring that to a boil for 25 minutes. The last way that we're going to preserve our apples today is to actually use the peels and the cores to create our own apple cider vinegar. So I am just filling 2-quart jars with our apple peels and cores. The recipe does say to leave a few inches in the jar above our apple peels and cores so that we have plenty of space for the vinegar to form. And any of these apples that I'm not using, I'm going to add to my compost bin. And I will put a link in the description below as well if you guys want to try making your own apple cider vinegar. This is my first time, so I will let you guys know how it goes. This recipe is actually very easy and very simple. The last step I have to do is just dissolve some sugar in water, and then I'm going to add that sugar water into our quart jars. The last step is just to put a coffee filter over the jars, and then I'm going to use my canning rings to seal on the coffee filters, and that is it. These are going to go in the pantry for 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks I will give you guys an update and we will do the next step together. And here is all of our apples that we canned today. We ended up canning 7 pints of applesauce, 10 pints of the apple pie filling, and then we have our 2 quarts of apple cider vinegar that we made. Let me know in the comments below if you like this kind of video and you would like to see more of my food preservation and canning recipes and freeze drying recipes. Let me know and I can post more content like that if you guys like it. Thank you again for watching and have a great day.